Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Transform Your Confidence Show. I'm your host, as usual, Raj Gurn. Before we kick things off, as I always do off the top of each episode, I'd love to get your support by asking you to subscribe to the Open Chest Confidence Academy on YouTube and on socials, and to the Transform Your Confidence Show on podcast platforms, whatever it is that you're on, because these are the places where you can get free access to all episodes, past and present. We also transcribe each episode to our blog at the openchestconfidenceacademy.com/media/podcast. So if you're one of those people like me where you love to read, that's the place for you. All right. So with this week's focus, we're getting ready to close off February with the leadership and advocacy themed episode. I am super pleased to welcome to the show Simone Milasas, a self-made millionaire, renowned speaker, serial best-selling author, and the host of the Choice and Change Action podcast. Simone will be chatting with me about how effective leadership skills build successful brands. So glad to have you on, Simone.
It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I want to just kick off right from the beginning. I want to ask you to share a little bit about your life before you develop the Joy of Business coaching program, which is, what brought me into your ecosystem, so that everyone watching, listening, and reading this can understand who you were at the very beginning before everything started.
Okay, so I'll give you a little quick synopsis. I'm going to say, when I was at high school and everyone was talking about, I did have a lot of friends that wanted to get married and have kids, etc. And everyone used to say to me, what do you want to do? And I'd be like, own my own business. And they would be like, what do you mean own your own business? What is that going to be? And I'd be like, I don't care, actually. I just want to own my own business. It wasn't like a certain field that I wanted to be in. I discovered that later. It was more so, to me, having a business was how you could be so incredibly creative. And to me, a business is really malleable. So, but here's the thing, I thought that was normal. Like, I thought like loving business and loving all of that was where everyone functioned from. It took me quite some years to realize that my point of view is really different. Hence writing the book, Joy of Business, and a friend of mine said to me, don't call it that. And I said, why not? And they said, because people aren't ready for it. They don't have a joy of business. And I was so like, one of those puppy dogs with their head on the side. I was like, but yes, they do. I said, why would they do business if they didn't love it, if it wasn't joyful? And he's like, that's not how people do business in this reality, in this society. So then I did start doing seminars and using access consciousness tools, which is the business I was in, and then wrote the book Joy of Business so that I could invite the world to a different possibility. Because to me, if you're not loving what you're doing, then why are you doing it? There's so much more out there that you could be, choosing.
You're so right, Simone. And yet people continue to do what they hate doing, right? I mean, there's just so much research out there about that. Before we kind of, continue on, there's something you said there that I feel I want to kind of just touch upon. And that is this whole idea about, really being your own boss. That's what entrepreneurship is about. Why did you feel that was kind of where you wanted to go in terms of your professional career? Was it because you had more kind of creative freedom to be able to take this kind of innovative idea of what you believe business to be, to kind of a larger audience? Because a lot of people like to stay in that kind of comfort zone of somebody else's world where they just kind of make an appearance. That's what I call executives. The make appearance people in other people's dreams. Like, tell me your thoughts around that.
That's true. Look, I think it's an interesting thing to navigate because the reason why I started it may not be where I ended up. And I think, that's life, that's living, that's business, that's everything. When you choose, you have an awareness. And for me, first off, it's like I had so many ideas. Like, initially, I desired to create something in the world where it woke people up. I had this, I just wanted to shake people by the shoulders and say, don't you get it? There's got to be something else than this, like the trauma and drama that everyone was choosing. So I started writing a whole lot of things down, and I wrote this whole piece on being vulnerable and was like, how do I wake people up so that when they're together, because most people have these like barriers with each other, rather than, what if you met someone, I don't care who they are, how much money they have or they don't have, or, the race or religion or anything. And you were just like, hi, like we're on this planet together. So that's what I decided to create. So that was probably my driving force. It wasn't necessarily, I have to do this on my own or I have to work for myself. I did discover later that I didn't have as much freedom when I was working with other people. So then I did that thing of demanding that I would never, ever, ever work for anyone else. And there was absolutely no question in that. There's this like commitment to only working with myself, which sort of bit me on the tail a few times, because there were possibilities available. And I was like, no, petulant, I'm not choosing this, until one day a friend of mine actually spoke to me about commitment, and he kept asking me the question, what does commitment mean to you? And I realized I had such a point of view that if I worked with somebody else, then I didn't have freedom, which is not true. It's like, it depends who you work with. So now, I mean, I've written books, I travel around the world, well, as much as I possibly can at the moment, doing seminars, etc. But I actually work with Access Consciousness. So I do essentially work for somebody else, and yet I have my own creative freedom as well. And I have many different revenue streams and many different wealth creations, I would call it, as well. So I think people trap themselves just as much when they sort of, feet in the ground, hands on hips, saying, I'm not going to work for someone else, I'm going to have to do this myself, because you literally are refusing to receive from so many possibilities that are available.
I love that you shared that, because, there always seems to be this kind of church and state between, those who work for others and those who work for self. And here you are talking about the hybrid model, where you can work for yourself, but still work for/with others. That's what I'm hearing you say. And I think that's really great, because at the end of the day, there is this whole kind of idea behind, diversifying what we do isn't just about doing it for self. It can be partnerships and collaborations and working together and so many different ways of doing the same thing, but still having a lot of control over what it is that you're actually doing within someone else's wheelhouse. And that's really what I'm hearing you say here. There is this other thing that I want to kind of tap into, Simone, and this is this whole idea of how vast your career is and has been, and how you've developed it. I want to kind of maybe break that down a little bit for anyone out there who's, maybe at the kind of precipice of that fork in the road where, do I work for myself? Do I work, for others? Is there a way that I can maybe do a little bit of both, which is, what I'm hearing you say. So let's talk a little bit about breaking that down. You have a very multi-hyphenate success story. You're an author, speaker, coach, podcaster, and a slew of other things. Before we deep dive this whole idea of effective leadership, which is really what, I want to hone in on as kind of the larger message of chatting with you, I want to talk about just this whole kind of sense of your journey that you've kind of really curated and curated on purpose. When you began your brand building journey, because this is really, the crux of what you've done here, is you decided to build out several avatars, and you've mentioned a few of them. I just mentioned a few of them. Can you share what you did first, which then allowed you to leverage to build upon the second, and then, things just kept going on from there? Because that's the part that most people seem to have the most difficult challenge with. How do I get started?
Yeah, look, and I'm going to say you need to just start and don't try and get it right. Like I have stumbled and fallen like a billion times, but I've chosen. And that I think is the key element here. It's like one of the tools I would even talk about in my book is choice creates awareness. Like you have to choose. There's the difference of those people who, wake up in the morning and go, oh, I wish I had $1 million, to those people who wake up and go, all right, I'm going to actualize $1 million. What action do I need to take? So I have been like successful in business, and I've been as far as this reality would say, not successful. Like I've made money, I've lost money. But to tell you the truth, neither of them I look at as right or wrong or good or bad. I have gained awareness from every single choice I've made, and that definitely makes me who I am today. There is one key piece here that I would love to share with everyone is this was what I used to do all the time. I'd create a business because for me personally, and if you can sort of come to that awareness of what it is that brings you joy with business, because most people think they have to do everything. You don't. It's like, that's why you can hire people. Other people like to do stuff that you don't. And one of my things that I used to do was, I mean, I love creating. I love that initial, you know, that generative energy where you go, oh, and you got this idea and you're like, oh, okay. And I love that beginning for me, right?
Yes.
Some people that would scare the hell out of them, you know, but for me, I love it. So I would start a business and put everything from absolute scratch, put everything into action. And then once it was up and it was running and it was making money and it was paying the bills and doing all of that, and then maybe even more, I realized this years later, so please don't make this mistake, ladies and gentlemen, is I got bored. And then what I would do is I would start destroying that business so that I could justify starting something different. And it took a friend of mine many years later, he was watching what I was doing and he said to me, you do realize you don't have to destroy your business in order to start another one, right? And I remember I was in Brisbane, Australia, and I was standing in my office and I looked at him and I went, oh, that's exactly what I'm doing. And then from that moment, I went, oh, I can have many different revenue streams. And that was a really key, I guess, learning point for me, is you don't have to destroy something in order to start something different. You can just start something different. It's that easy. And I think the piece that people make it so hard is they try and get it right. Look, you're not going to get it right. It's like you are going to stumble and fall. And every person that you see that is extremely successful, ask them their stories. Most of them have been, I mean, a friend of mine actually declared bankruptcy a few years ago, and a mutual friend of ours went, well, welcome to the Billionaires Club. And we started laughing because it's like the amount of people who've declared bankruptcy, you know, the amount of people who have stumbled and fallen and just crashed and burned. It's, to me, that's not relevant. It's what are you going to do tomorrow? Are you going to get back up? Or are you going to sit in this place of going, oh no, this is terrible and awful and this happened to me? Nothing happens to you. You create it by your choices. And I would say I've made more bad choices than most people have made choices, but I choose. And then you go, whoops, you know,
I love
the good thing I'm cute. Yeah.
You are, absolutely. And, you know, and you're very easy to talk to. And I'm sure that, you know, people that kind of take your mentorship advice just really, you know, get this great way of creating a connection with you. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of this whole idea behind successful leadership. It has a lot to do with creating a meaningful connection with the stakeholders, whoever they may be. So I want to ask you this, Simone. Your program, The Joy of Business, has a unique vantage point in its ability to help people build a strong leadership muscle, among other things. Can you share some highlights about your program that you feel everyone here needs to know?
Yeah, look, I'm going to say it starts with you. It starts with you to, and one of the things I would talk about too is the 5 elements of intimacy, which I think you need to have this with you, which is vulnerability, gratitude, trust, honor, and allowance. Because when you have that with you, it's like, then you can have that with others. And, you know, people look, I mean, if we use, I mean, relationships for sure, but if you use business and you have relationships in business, I mean, I sometimes say having a business partner is more intimate than actually your lover, because you assume you're on the same page, but you got to have this, you know, this moment and this play, which, are you on the same page, or do we need to change something? Like, let's talk this out and let's see what's actually going to create something greater. So I think if you have those 5 elements of intimacy with you, then you can start to have that with somebody else. And I can't stress this enough. Like, I know I wrote a book called Joy of Business, but have fun with what you're doing. It's like, so many people sit in judgment of themselves, and judgment has never created anything greater. It only ever creates something less. So that level of vulnerability that you're willing to have, it's like, that is one of the most attractive things in the world, when you're just being you, you know, not being somebody else, when you're being you. So I would really work at you and stop trying to look at other people to reference what you are being or not being. You are fabulous. It's like, you've got to get that.
You are fabulous. Those are the best words for 2022, Simone. Can you just share the 5 levels of intimacy again for everyone?
Yeah. Gratitude, trust, allowance, vulnerability, and honor.
Wow. Now that's
and
like
you know
a
what
whole...
I used to do?
Yes.
I used to get little Post-it notes, and in my bathroom, I wrote those 5 elements of intimacy on a Post-it note. And as I'm brushing my teeth every night, I would look up at it and I would be like, okay, so where wasn't I willing to be trusting of myself or vulnerable with myself, or, grateful for myself? And it wasn't about judging what I wasn't. I was just like, oh, that, okay. And I would destroy and uncreate all of my points of view, because your fixed points of view only ever stop you. Mm-hmm. And I would destroy and uncreate all of those fixed points of view, and then go, all right, tomorrow, what would it take for tomorrow to be greater than today? And not from looking at something as less than or lack, just from a request for more. Like, let's go. We've got a whole world out there that is available to us.
Absolutely. And that in and by itself can be a real fear-based thing for a lot of people. They like to put themselves into a box that they know, rather than to kind of step out into the unknown. What would you say to those people, Simone, since you've done it time and time again?
Look, that is one justification that I hear a lot of people talk about, is fear. And have a look at what's underneath it. And I'm not talking like peeling the layers of the onion and really going through that. I just mean, ask yourself, okay, well, number one question, is this fear or is this excitement? A lot of people tend to misidentify fear as excitement. And because it's unknown, right? It's like, if you're about to, jump, you don't actually know what's going to occur. You have an idea of what you would like to occur, but you don't know what this is going to show up like. So how many people misidentify that and go, oh, I'm fearful, I'm too scared. And it's like, well, what are you scared of? Like, I opened up this business, one of the businesses that I have, called Antiques and Possibilities, in the local village that I'm in August 2020. And everyone went, what are you doing? And I was like, I know, because where I live too, Queensland was totally locked everyone out, right? So, but I sat in front, and someone asked me this question the other day. They said, what made you do that? And I sat in front of the shop and I looked at it and I went, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? And that's a question I would ask myself a lot. And I went, it could be a tax deduction. Okay, I can handle that. Let's go. And, it's this antique shop that I'm an owner of other antique shops in another city. So they married together. But look at what's the worst possible thing that can happen and just go. Like, you're going to be okay. You've got this. Yeah.
I love that advice, Simone, because, that's the big thing. A lot of people, they feel the emotion of fear, and they stop right there. They don't actually then, think about, where is that fear actually coming from, and why is it showing up the way that it's showing up, without, as you said, going down this whole rabbit hole of peeling that onion. Because, oftentimes it's a lot simpler, the answer that you're looking for, and you oftentimes already know what it is. I know from my experience that, when I work so hard to try and figure out the fear piece, it's always a lot simpler than it actually is, in terms of the way I go down that rabbit hole. And the rabbit hole just then opens up all kinds of other coffins that weren't even a part of the process. So that's the other thing, that, this fear thing really is something in business that I always say to my clients, Simone, that you have to actually make friends with that. You have to have a relationship with that, and you have to determine what the narrative for you is going to be in that relationship. Because whenever you enter the unknown, the automatic first kind of instinctual thing that happens is that fear feeling. So get used to it, embrace it, because sometimes the fear will actually take you in a journey that's far better than all of the kind of check marks that we usually, hope is what we're doing when we're opening businesses, or we're looking to grow them or expand them or diversify them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have a great tool that you can use as well, because we are way more psychic than we think we are, right?
Yes.
We pick up on all of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of other people. And so the tool that I would use is, who does this belong to? So when that energy shows up, like you're saying, because it is there, and it's like, so ask, okay, so who does this belong to, right? And the thing is, if it lightens up, it's not yours. And 99% of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions are not ours. And I'll give you like a really small example is horse riding. Okay. So I was horse riding and having so much fun, and it was great. And then I spoke to my mother about it, and she went, oh my God, you used to scare the hell out of me when you go riding and across this paddock and da da. And I went, because I started to get fearful of horse riding, and I was like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And then when I spoke to her, I went, oh, it's not mine. It was hers. Watching her daughter go, screaming across this paddock. I was having a great time. But then my mother has this point of view. So then you pick up on that. Yeah. And I mean, for myself, my father, he escaped during World War II from Lithuania and has this whole story, and then my mother also came from Scotland to Australia on a boat that cost £10. So they have a lot of stories in regards to that. So to them, financial stability was really important. Whereas I grew up with being a little bit like, let's play, and if you start to like have that energy of like, okay, I must get my finances into place, which I didn't for a very long time.
As most entrepreneurs don't. Like, who do you know that gets that right at the beginning? No one.
No, you don't. Yeah. No, but it was like, but the importance of it was from my parents. That was not from me. So who does this belong to? Like, I remember, I just wanted to play. And I remember my dad was an accountant. And he drew this graph for me one day, because I was like, I like being creative. I was being an awful young girl, to my amazing father. And he drew this graph, right? And he had like the create thing on it as a part of the pie. And then he had the finances and everything there. And he said, Simone, you need to look like this. And I said, no, that's not my graph, and I drew mine. It was all create and da, da, da. And he looked at me and he said, Simone, if you don't know about this, and he pointed to the finance, he went, you can't have all of this. And I was like, oh, because I knew he was correct, but I didn't want to have a look at it. But that moment I went, okay, I need to start looking at what I'm not willing to look at as well, if I'm going to create myself to be a success.
Absolutely. Just choice words for everyone. Guys, if you're just joining us, I'm talking to the fabulous Simone Milasas. She is just such an incredible, woman with all the experiential insights that she's sharing with us today. I want you to rewind this back. I want to make sure that you start from the top, because this really is a lot of food for thought for those of you who are kind of sitting at the crossroads of your life and you're trying to figure out what my next step is. Sometimes it's really the mindset piece. And a lot of that is, what I'm hearing Simone share right now with us. This is our episode on leadership and advocacy. And I kind of want to loop you back around to that, Simone. I want to get your insights on this. What have you learned are the top 3 characteristics that, no matter what your leadership style is, are mandatory for you to get right to be a really great business leader?
Okay, so I read this article many, many years ago by a very successful businessman in Australia. And they said to him, how did you become so successful? And he said, I listened. I surrounded myself by capable people and I listened. And I really took that on board. And I mean, I just had I have about 10 people who work with me really closely. And then we have, then it sort of extends out. Some of those 10 people are so quiet, and I'm very talkative, and so is a lot of other people that I work with. But I'm always like, hey, do you have any comments here? Do you have any awareness? I listen and I ask people, what is your awareness with this? Because if I just choose everything that I'm choosing, that's all we're ever going to get. But if I'm choosing based on what I'm aware of and based on what everybody else is aware of, then that's a different result showing up. So I would say, listen, ask people for what their awareness is. And as I mentioned previously, choice creates. Just choose. Like, you're going to find out what happens when you choose. That to me is like the fun. Like, what if business was the adventure of living? It's like, let's go. Most people would rather be right than be free. I'm asking, what would it take for you to be free and have way too much fun with whatever it is you're choosing?
I love that. Let's be free, guys. That's really, that's the purpose of life and existence on a holistic perspective, which is a whole other show, which, Simone, I kind of feel that you and I would have a great conversation. So I'd love to have you back on just to kind of tap into that, and also tap into these kind of 5 layers of intimacy that I'm really, really intrigued on getting your perspective on. So, I know that we're talking about leadership and advocacy today. And as much as I want to go into those areas, I'm going to stay on on track.
We're going to hold back.
We're gonna do that. We're gonna be a little bit disciplined here just to make sure that the value proposition of this episode, that we're able to kind of really, really keep it succinct with what we're promising. So let me ask you this, Simone. Another way to command brand authority is really to become an author. So many people are doing it. Literally everyone is doing that as a way for them to be introduced into the marketplace in a level of authority. Now, this is something that you've done time and time again. I want to ask you this. We're sitting in a place now, especially since the last few years with the lockdown and everything, people have been sitting there writing books. There's a lot more books going into the marketplace. A lot of publishers who are people that I work with also say that they're so backlogged because of just the amount of people that are kind of sitting with wanting to tell their story on different levels. How do we do this in a saturated marketplace? That is what publishing is today. Tell those people out there who are, new authors, because people like yourself who are already in the marketplace and who already, have kind of figured it out, but have also written many different types of books and already have this kind of profile as an author. You're in a different place to people who are newbies looking to use authorship to be able to build their brand authority. What would you say to them right now? What do you feel they should be doing?
Okay, so I would start asking yourself questions and ask, what's your agenda? Like, what is it that you're actually trying to get out of this? Because for me, you can't write a book and expect to make $1 million. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
It's for me, Joy Business was the first book that I wrote, and sometimes people can't afford to go to your seminar, or they're not in the right location, etc. So I thought putting Joy Business into a book that anyone could buy, on Amazon, etc., all those places, was getting to more people. And then actually Joy Business is translated into 16 languages. So
wow.
It's translated into 16 languages, and it's also in audio in English. And we're working, it's been a few of them are coming out in the languages as well. So to me, that matched the energy of what it was that I wanted to create, because it was getting out there in the world. Like German is the best selling besides English, and it's not that far behind. And I'm like, okay, so the Germans love Joy Business. Who would have thought, So it's like, what are you actually trying to create with getting a book out there? And look, everyone is different. So your perspective on something is going to be different. If we stopped creating based on somebody else has already done it, then the world would be a really boring place. Like I think this is hysterical. In 1957 in Australia, they actually shut the patent office down because color TV had just been, bought out. And they said, there's nothing else that can be invented because color TV is here. Can you imagine if that was it? If color TV was our, there's always something else that's possible. So, I mean, I don't know what idiot chose that, but it lasted 6 months, and then they opened the patent office up again. But here's the thing. It's like, what do you know? What are you aware of? So ask yourself, what's my agenda with this? Please don't make it about money. It's actually going to cost you some money to, if you want to go to print as well, you can make money. Like over the years, I have made money from my book, but I've probably made more money from people being aware of access consciousness and Joy Business, and then coming to the seminars is right. What it's been about, is what I'm going to say. Yeah.
So really, at the end of the day, it's putting the book out anyway, because you will have a unique experience and perspective around the same thing, because there's nothing really new that people are talking about. It's just a new approach and a new way of talking about the same thing. And your thing may be the thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Simone, but your thing may be the thing that somebody was waiting to hear, even though they've heard this many times, that maybe your way was the one that was going to open up their mind to be able to say, that's exactly what it is that I wanted to get. Right?
Yep, exactly.
So let me ask you this, Simone. Now, we're in 2022, and all the pundits are saying that podcasting will be the most effective way to showcase a person's leadership prowess and also to build their brand authority. Now, obviously, podcasting has been around for a while now, but this is like coined as the big year. So if you're not podcasting, this probably would be the year for you to start doing that, especially from a business perspective. Now, Simone, you host a really popular podcast show called the Choice and Change Action Podcast. I want to ask you this. Can you share a little bit about what you talk about and who it targets?
Yeah, look, I did something that most people would say that's not a smart business choice, but I used to have another podcast that was, I started it quite a few years ago and it had a lot of listeners, etc. But I got bored.
No.
I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I said, because it was basically just about business and money. And I love, they're two of my favorite topics. So I went, and everyone was like, you can't do this. And I went, yes, I can. So I decided to create something that involved any topic I could talk about. So that's why it's the choice, change, and action. Because to me, like as I've mentioned, you've got to choose in order to create a change, and what action are you going to take? So I do explore many different, avenues. I obviously still talk about business, money, investing, because it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. But we also, relationships is a big thing that I talk about there. Anything. So it makes it more fun for me. And I think if you're going to start a podcast, make it fun. Like my gardener, who is an amazing man, and he pinged me last night and he said, hey, I'm starting this podcast with this friend of mine. Will you come on for me? I was like, absolutely. And I know what it's going to be about. It's going to be like, he became a gardener because he wanted to work more with the earth. He was a fitness instructor or whatever. So he's doing something he loves. And I think that's really important, is make sure that you love it and you're having fun with it, or it's not going to end up being great. And do it because it's fun for you, not about getting it right.
And that's been a theme throughout here, Simone. You truly are a person, and you've lived this. You consistently keep living this. It's just get out and do it. As long as it's surrounded on some level with passion and purpose for you, it's worth doing it, right?
Yeah, if it's joyful, do it, and Don't make it about the money as well. I see a lot of people.
That's hard. That's hard.
I know. Yeah, because they go, oh, well, what is it? Okay, it's sort of like a fine line. Because two things that I would look at here is choose it because it's fun and it's joyful. And one of the things I would talk about is money follows joy. Most people think joy follows money, and they go, oh, when I have this money, then I'll be happy. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You actually get to wake up and choose happy, right? It doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account or don't have in your bank account. So there's that piece. Choose it because it's fun and it's joyful, right? And what you can also ask, which is a great question, is what revenue stream will contribute to this, will support this? Because on the other hand, I see a lot of people in business, and I was guilty of this one as well, is just go, this is fun, this is fun, this is fun, this is fun, this is fun. But it was like, oh, hang on a second. How am I paying the mortgage? Like, where's the, so I did start to have a look at, well, what revenue stream will support this? And I literally sat down and looked at everything that I was creating and went, okay, some of them were money spinners, some were not. But the ones who weren't, okay, were they contributing to the bigger picture? And for me, I would like to, invite and create more consciousness on the planet. So if it's contributing to that, yes, and started to really look at all of that for myself, but not exclude it, because I see people just want to create and then they exclude money, or they make it only about money. It's like both of those points of view is going to trap you. So what's your happy medium?
And, I love that, Simone, because this just kind of brings back this whole kind of, ideology that I believe that you believe in, because you've been talking about this quite often throughout our conversation. And that's just finding the place where multiple things could meet to make, your value proposition right for you. You talked about that when I was talking to you about executiveship versus entrepreneurship, and you says, why can't you do both? And here you are, you're saying it again. Why can't you, find a passion, purpose project, and then see if there's an opportunity to be able to leverage it for other things, money perhaps being one of them, maybe not being the only. So let me ask you this, for people out there who haven't gotten into the podcasting world, I want to kind of, garner your thoughts around what you feel are the key advantages of doing so, bearing in mind that we're talking about leadership and building authority, and we're kind of staying in that realm. What's the advantage of starting your own podcast around that?
Well, I mean, as you said, podcast is a huge thing at the moment. Like, I think it's funny. Like, I have, a guy who comes and cleans my window, my car, the gardener, and they're always got earphones on. They're always listening to podcasts. Like, just because a lot of people out there are doing it doesn't mean that there's no space for you. There is space for you. And a lot of people like always like, oh, have you listened to this? Have you listened? I don't know about yourself, but people always ping me links to listen to other podcasts. So then you have more awareness on that. So again, I think it's if you're not judging yourself and what you're choosing and what you're creating, and get out there. And if you're really talking from, I want to say like from that vulnerability, like, that what's actually up, then that is one of the greatest invitations in the world. Like you not judging you and you showing up as all of you. People are like, what? Who is she? What has she got? Like, yeah, I'd like some of that. It becomes attractive to the world because people are bored with people pretending to be someone else. We weren't put on this planet to pretend to be somebody else. We were put on this planet to be us. Right. So when you're being that, and that to me is the best leadership skill that you can choose, is be you.
I love that. And my next question for you was going to be, what for you is effective leadership? Would you say that what you just said there answers that question, or do you want to add more to that?
I would say that answers the question. And again, I'm going to reiterate, not about getting it right, because you get it when you get it, and you hear it when you hear it. And you, like, every day I ask to be greater, and I met this, in Japan once, I met this guy. He was made sushi. It was amazing. But he'd been making sushi for, it was something like 85 years, right? He was like, as a little boy. Wow. And he said, every day I asked to make sushi greater than I made it yesterday. Wow. And I was like, are you kidding me? He did not become complacent about anything. And it was an art, and he enjoyed it. And I think that's the way you need to, that's true leadership for yourself. Right.
Absolutely. I want to round things off. I want to encapsulate things for everyone out there. The core takeaway really for this conversation is, what is the correlation between effective leadership and building a successful brand, Simone? What do you want to leave everyone with?
I think the key element here is to ask questions. And one of the things I talk about in the seminars in my book, and etc., is we're brought up to have the answer. And I don't know about you, but at school it was like, what's the answer? What's the answer? What's the answer? And also you had to get the answer the way the teacher wanted you to get the answer, or you were wrong,
Right.
I'm giving you, what if every single thing you've ever been told your whole entire life you found out was a lie, then what would you choose? And it's like, if you be in question every single day, it's like, ask questions like, what else is truly possible here? How does it get any better than this? Then as you ask a question, choices show up, possibilities show up. It's like, choose. And then the fourth thing I was look at with that is contribution. It's like, how many of you are actually willing to receive? Like, we do this stupid thing of thinking we have to do everything ourselves. We don't. It's like, look at nature. Like, nature is continuously contributing to each other.
Right.
What if we actually did that as well? And we were willing to, and most people go, oh, I can gift, that's comfortable. I can do that. Well, I'm going to ask you, what if you started receiving? It's like, what difference could show up?
I love that choice words. So much to think about in this conversation, Simone, so much for people to sit with and to, look, it's a great time, in the year when it's the right time for you to sit with anything. That's what I always say. And I want to ask you this before we kind of close off, Simone. Is there anything at all that you feel that you want to add to this conversation before we close out? Really talking about effective leadership and how you can use and cultivate your personal leadership style to be authentic, because with authenticity comes authority as well. Your thoughts?
Relax, definitely relax. Like, most people think that authority comes from being all tense and, maybe yelling and going, no, this is the way we're doing it. And it's like, no, relax. It's like, if you had no judgment of you and you were relaxed and you listened, then you're in total allowance of everything that's going on, you actually have more awareness. Like most people focus here, but it's like, what if you actually relaxed and you had awareness of everything? Then you'll hear those whispers, you know, that whisper that you go, what's that? And it's like, oh, let's choose that. Let's play over here. Let's play here. So relaxation, big one for me.
Absolutely. And it's very much a part of the yogic philosophy as well, right? Just to be able to tap into the energy force that is you and how that translates and relates to the energy forces that are outside of you. It's just so fascinating. There's so many different ways of saying the same thing. And I think at the end of the day, the big takeaway for me in this conversation is to be fluid. Is to be, you know, tapped into who you are in that given moment. And as Simone has rightfully said, her career trajectory shows this, is proof of this. Allow yourself to change your mind. Allow yourself to evolve in a different direction if that's, you know, what makes sense to you. And perhaps don't go too deep down a rabbit hole that may take you in a direction that wasn't even where you were looking for an answer in the first place. I want everybody to have the opportunity to be able to reach out to you, Simone, because I know there's so much more, you know, wealth of wisdom that comes not just from kind of your professional career, but also from, you know, the place of who you have become as a person. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, even though my name is not easy to pronounce, there is no other Simone Milasas in the world, which is great for Google.
Yes.
So yeah, it is. It's perfect. So my Instagram handle, my website, Facebook, all that sort of stuff is all Simone Milasas, and it's SIMONE MILASAS. And you can look at accessjoybusiness.com as well. We've got joy business facilitators actually all over the world doing classes. So
wow.
And Access Consciousness is actually like accessconsciousness.com is where all the tools that I, you know, when I met Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, I just went, oh my goodness, this guy's talking about everything that I know is possible, but nobody else was talking about it. So hence I've been working with Access for 21 years and the books are filled with all of those tools.
Wow. And I also read that you've been quite the key team member to be able to really build it to the global kind of scale that it's come to be. And I think, you know, that has a lot, not just to do with a lot of the things that we've been talking about, but it comes back down to this whole idea of being a part of something that makes sense for you as an individual, being a part of that greater whole. Simone, what a pleasure you are. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I really thank you for coming on and sharing just, you know, your experiential, you know, thoughts behind, you know, a lot of what you've accomplished, a lot of what you've seen. And I really do genuinely want you to come back on. I really have a lot that I want to talk to you about. And that intimacy stuff that you were talking about, I'm telling you, it begs an entire episode. Please come back on. And thank you so much for being on today.
I would absolutely love to come back on for sure. Thank you so much for having me, Raj.
Absolutely. Guys, I really hope that you got some real value from today's show and that you'll share what you learned with everyone that you know that you feel needs to get these takeaways. Please invite them over to subscribe to the YouTube channel at the Open Chest Confidence Academy. If you're a podcaster, hop on over and search for the Transform Your Confidence show. And if, like me, you just like to just deep dive the read, go over to my website, the openchestconfidenceacademy.com/media/podcast. And I'll see you next week for another exciting episode. This time it'll be about mindset and clarity, which, you know, really is the way that I love to kick off the beginning of all of my months. It's the month of March. It's my birthday month, and I cannot wait to share it with each and every one of you. Until then, take care of yourself.